This is Brooke Booth, life coach at brookeboothcoaching.com. I'm going to talk about the grief cycle. So, if you're in a mixed faith marriage due to a faith transition, pretty good chance you've experienced grief in some form. A faith transition, like just looking at that, often means the loss of an old identity, an old community, a way of life, a belief system. And then you add a mixed faith marriage. Now you have the loss of, the temple marriage, eternal marriage, the loss of the foundation you had in your marriage, the loss of expectations, future plans, like temple service, missionary service together. Loss of all of these things. Loss compounded on top of loss. So it can be helpful to become familiar with the grief cycle so you can be aware of the feelings as they come up, process them, allow them, instead of resist or distract from them. Because remember, feelings are not to be rushed. They're not problems to be solved. They're not stopping you from living your life. They are inherent and part of your life. So let's learn a little bit more about what it means to be a human with a faith transition, with a mixed faith marriage, through the lens of grief and the grief cycle. So I'm going to talk specifically about it as it applies to the loss of like the old marriage or the same faith marriage. So there are 5 stages to grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. Now, everyone experiences every single stage. It's not always a linear process. You may not experience them in any particular order. You may revisit some multiple times. You may skip others altogether. Helpful to know this. We don't all follow things in sort of a textbook fashion. Okay, let's talk about each one in turn. Denial can look like avoidance, confusion, shock, fear. What you're really not doing is you're not living in actual reality, but in some sort of preferable pretend reality. At first, doesn't really look like much. Not talking about things, not talking about the faith transition, not making any decisions, not making any changes. Maybe you're still going to church, or your spouse is still going to church. The family still looks very much like the active Mormon family. Ignoring the rumblings in you or in your partner because they're scary, right? They're scary. So I have a client who told me when his wife first told him about her faith transition, he just didn't believe her at first. He thought, this is a phase, this is going to pass. Treated it kind of like a cold that would go away. Okay, classic denial. I did this with my own faith transition. I was in denial for some time, months, if not years, that there was a shift inside of me, that I was no longer in alignment with what was being taught on various topics. Okay, again, not living in actual reality, but some sort of pretend or preferred reality. Second one, anger. And this can look like frustration, irritation, anxiety. This might sound like, why me? It's not fair. Things like that. A lot of times anger comes across as, it looks like attacking. Maybe attacking the church. Why do they teach things that hurt families like this? Attacking yourself. Why can't I just believe? Attacking your spouse. Why can't they understand? Maybe attacking the extended family. Why do they have to be so orthodox, so rigid, so letter of the law? Anger often manifests because we're just really sad. Remember, this is the grief cycle. Loss, sadness is part of it. But oftentimes anger is what presents when really what's underneath it is sadness. We don't know what to do with the grief or the sadness, so we act out in anger. Now, then we judge ourselves for being angry, right? And now we're adding shame to it all. So fun, so fun. But I want to talk for a minute about anger. This is often the least popular, least favorite phase. It definitely has the worst reputation. And I teach a lot about anger in my coaching with my clients, that it's not bad. It's not a problem. Feeling anger is actually very normal. Feeling anger is very, very different than reacting to our anger. And I suggest you feel it, you allow it, and then you decide how you want to act instead of just reacting. Sometimes we conflate being snippy and snarky and passive aggressive and yelling and screaming with anger. That's reacting to one's anger. Feeling anger is not a problem. Never, ever a problem. Okay. Bargaining. Struggling to find meaning, reaching out to others, telling stories. A lot of times we try to avoid grief with negotiation. A lot of times, like, what ifs? What if I attended the temple more? What if I was more spiritual? Things like that. So maybe you go online, really get into stories, start sharing your frustration. Maybe you seek to negotiate with your spouse so they stay or so they leave with you. Things like this. Sometimes it looks like a little bit of hostility, a little bit of fog, thinking your marriage can't be fixed. It's a bit of a holding ground. You're not really moving forward. You're not really making decisions. You're not really facing the future. When in this bargaining phase, some work that I find to be helpful is to start to ask yourself, what's the emotion I'm feeling that's causing me to act this way? What am I feeling? And then, yeah, you're going to be really surprised by what I'm about to say. Take some time to just feel it. Let it be there and allow it. So much of this work we do around grief and the grief cycle is just being with our emotions and letting them be present so that they pass through, so we can keep moving through the process. Because when we resist and resist and resist and ignore and distract, we prolong the process a great deal. Okay, next phase, depression. Sometimes when we start to really take stock of our present situation, bargaining isn't an option anymore, it doesn't make sense anymore. We're starting to face what's really happening. And this is when, the loss feels more present. It feels more unavoidable. Sometimes you might go inward within the sadness, retreat, be less sociable, reach out less to your spouse, to your extended family, to your community. All of this is part and parcel to this stage. Isolation, feeling alone, feeling abandoned. This is all pretty typical. A lot of times you realize you can never go back to normal, and you're not sure really how to handle that. And again, this can send you right back into maybe denial, could send you right back into anger. You don't know how to handle this. Sometimes anger is easier to handle than helplessness. Okay, that's bargaining. I'm sorry, that is depression. Very last one is acceptance. Acceptance is different than the other ones, but I want to also suggest to you that it's not always like rainbows and daisies. And I'll talk to you about that. Acceptance is when we start to explore new options, new places, new plans, moving on, realizing that, willing to compromise, willing to fall in love, willing to explore new ways of interacting, willing to explore new traditions, new schedules, things like this. One important part about acceptance is that acceptance doesn't mean it's okay, that you like what's happening, that you've given it a stamp of approval. Acceptance is not approval. Acceptance is much more along the lines of, I'm going to be okay. Coming to terms with a new reality. Now, what I was saying earlier is sometimes we think acceptance is going to feel great. And there is some relief in acceptance, don't get me wrong. But acceptance is like when it's time to do construction after deconstruction, so it's work too. Acceptance takes vulnerability, being willing to show up and risk rejection, sort of showing our soft bellies. It takes courage to build again after a loss, knowing that maybe this will not last forever either. Acceptance takes like a lot of emotions come along with that don't always feel fantastic, but that doesn't mean it's not worth it, and that doesn't mean there isn't a lot of really good reasons to do just those things, the building again and the falling in love again and the compromising and all of that. So let me just talk to you for a minute about how this applies to a mixed faith marriage. So like I said earlier, there's a significant loss in a mixed faith marriage. Like there's the loss of the same faith marriage due to the faith transition. And this can be compounded by loss of community, loss of, belief systems, loss of certainty. All sorts of things are compounded. So even structure like family home evening, family prayer, Sunday activities. So it's not just a loss of a way of life, but it's also structures and patterns and beliefs. There's a lot going on. So I want to give you some tips on dealing with all of this. One is be very, very gentle with yourself. Remember, this doesn't always look like a linear path. You may skip steps, you may repeat steps, and it's all okay. Be present with the process and allow it, and be oh so gentle with yourself as you go through it. And then the next one is be gentle with your spouse, because guess what? They're going through it too. Now theirs may look different than yours, that you may not doing it in the exact lockstep. They may be in a different cycle. You may be in depression. They may be in anger. They may be in acceptance. You may be in denial. But be gentle with them. Let them have the process be a process for them too. There's no time frame. Sometimes I sort of get the feeling of like, okay, I've been patient with you for 3 months. We're done here now. Let's move on. Next step. It doesn't always work that way. Be really gentle with yourself. Be really gentle with them. And then the other thing I want to talk to you is a little bit about acceptance. Sometimes what we do with acceptance is we'll step into it and then we'll step out of it. And then we'll step into it and then we'll step out of it. And then we'll step into it and then we'll step out of it. And that's okay. Sometimes we just want to step into it and stay in it, and we get frustrated when we keep stepping out. But that's, again, part of the process sometimes. And when you can just relax and let that be, you'll step into it more and more. It'll come more often if you just allow the process to be the process instead of adding frustration or disappointment whenever you step out of it. Okay, this is a little primer on the grief cycle and mixed faith marriage. I'm sure you're familiar already with the grief cycle, but it can be really helpful to review the steps and to think about it in terms of your exact situation and mixed faith marriages. Hope you found this helpful. If you were like, yes, Brooke, this is me. I've got all these emotions and I'm not dealing well with them, or I'm ready to go into the construction mode, the build-up mode, and think about how to really create a new foundation for this marriage. Now that, we've gone through a lot of these things, but I don't really know what to do, or it's not coming together well, or I'm really concerned about being able to do this and do this well, you might need a coach. Reach out to me. Go to my website, brookeboothcoaching.com. Go to work with me and click on the blue button that says schedule a free call, and let's get on a consultation. And I want to hear what's happening in your marriage. I want to hear where you are in this cycle, what you've accomplished, what you still want to accomplish. I want to hear what your pain points are and what the goals are you have in your relationship. And we'll see if coaching's a good fit for you, and if coaching can help you create a roadmap to get to where you want to be in your relationship, to fully step into acceptance, fully step into really rebuilding a whole new marriage with a great, beautiful foundation where a mixed faith marriage can thrive. It's totally possible. All right, reach out to me and grab one of my free calls. I don't offer very many a month, but you can get yours, and let's talk. Find out what's going on with you in your mixed faith marriage. All right, wishing you the best.